Part 1. The Discovery. I've been married for 9 years and my job has always required me to travel. At first, it was something I worried about, being away from home and the potential strain it might place on my marriage. Over time, though, I convinced myself that it wasn't an issue. Our routine settled into a rhythm. I'd leave for a few days and we'd reconnect when I returned. This trip was supposed to be no different. I had a 3-day business trip scheduled in San Francisco for a client presentation. I packed my suitcase the night before and spent the evening at home, making small talk over dinner. She seemed normal, perhaps a little distracted, but I didn't think much of it. We were both busy people, after all, and I assumed her mind was preoccupied with work. The flight out was smooth, and the first 2 days of the trip were uneventful. We exchanged our usual texts, brief updates about our days, a photo of the view from my hotel window, and her asking me to pick up something from the airport on the way back. But by the 3rd day, her responses became slower, shorter. I shrugged it off, thinking she might be having a tough week at work. When I got home, I immediately noticed something was off. She was friendly enough but distant, almost as if she was distracted. It wasn't obvious, more like a subtle change in her demeanor. I asked how her week had been, and she gave vague answers about how nothing interesting had happened. That night, I went to bed with an uneasy feeling I couldn't explain. A few days later, I was unpacking my suitcase, a task I normally put off for days. As I unzipped a small side pocket, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. It was an earring, small, silver, and definitely not hers. I froze, staring at it, trying to come up with an explanation that didn't point to the worst. Maybe it fell in by accident at the hotel. Maybe it belonged to someone who used the room before me. But as much as I wanted to believe that the placement of the earring didn't fit, it was tucked away in a pocket I rarely use. I decided to ask her about it that evening. I tried to keep my tone casual. As I showed her the earring, she glanced at it briefly and said, "I don't know whose that is. Maybe it's from the hotel." Her answer was so quick, so dismissive, that it only added to my unease. She didn't ask any questions or seem surprised by the discovery. Instead, she told me I should call the hotel to check. The conversation ended there, but my suspicions didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her reaction kept replaying in my mind. It didn't make sense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The next day, while she was at work, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I went through her things. I started with our tablet we both use, which she sometimes used for messaging and social media. It was logged into her accounts, so I had access to her messages. I didn't find anything outright incriminating, but there were a few conversations that raised red flags. One was with a coworker I vaguely knew of, a man she'd mentioned once or twice in passing. Their messages weren't overtly romantic or sexual, but they were far too personal for my liking. Late-night exchanges, inside jokes, and comments that felt flirtatious in tone. My heart sank as I read through them, but I knew this wasn't enough to confront her. I needed more proof. I decided to check the footage from our home security camera. We had a camera installed at the front door to keep an eye on packages and visitors. As I reviewed the recordings from the weekend I was away, I noticed something strange. On one of the nights, 2 men arrived at the house minutes apart. Both stayed for several hours before leaving. My stomach churned as I watched the footage. I replayed it multiple times, hoping I'd misunderstood the timestamps or missed some innocent explanation. But there it was, plain as day. 2 strangers entering my home while I was away. It was undeniable, and the implications were crushing. Part 2, the confrontation. After discovering the security footage, I knew I couldn't confront her without more information. The evidence I had was compelling, but it wasn't enough to confirm the full extent of her actions. I needed undeniable proof, something that would make her lies impossible to maintain. The next morning, I called a private investigator. It felt surreal explaining my situation to a stranger, but I had no other options, and I wasn't going to confront her until I had all the proof I needed. The investigator was professional and a matter of fact. He suggested placing a tracker on her car and monitoring her activities for a week. It sounded intrusive, but I agreed. I needed answers. While the investigator did his work, I tried to stay calm and act normal. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at her, I felt a mixture of confusion and suspicion. She acted as though everything was fine, going about her daily routine as if nothing had changed. I wondered how she could be so calm if she was hiding something so serious. 4 days later, the investigator called me with an update. He had followed her during her lunch breaks and discovered she had visited a local hotel twice in the past week. Each time, she met with the coworker I had seen in her messages. The investigator provided photos of them entering and leaving the hotel together. While they didn't show anything explicitly inappropriate, the context was damning. Armed with this new information, I decided it was time to confront her. That evening, I waited until after dinner to bring it up. I started by asking about her coworker. Her reaction was immediate. She froze for a split second before brushing off my question with a casual, "Why are you asking about him?" I pressed further, mentioning the messages I had seen. Her expression shifted from calm to defensive. She denied any wrongdoing, claiming their conversations were harmless. When I brought up the hotel visits, her face turned pale. She sounded like she was tripping over her words, trying to come up with an explanation, but I cut her off. "I hired a private investigator. I know you've been meeting him at a hotel. I have photos." The room fell silent. She didn't deny it. Instead, she started crying and saying it was a mistake, that she had been feeling lonely and disconnected. She insisted it was only emotional and had never crossed into physical infidelity. I didn't believe her. "What about the men from the security footage?" I asked. Her eyes widened in shock, and she opened her mouth to speak, but said nothing. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. Eventually, she admitted to inviting them over, but insisted it was just a get-together with some friends. Her story didn't add up, and I wasn't interested in hearing more lies. At that moment, I knew our marriage was finished. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. I needed space to think without her presence clouding my judgment. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house that night, or a marriage built on lies. Part 3. The aftermath. Leaving the house that night was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew it was the right decision. I stayed with a close friend who offered me a place to clear my head. The next morning, I began taking steps to protect myself. My first call was to a lawyer. The lawyer listened patiently as I explained everything. He advised me to gather as much evidence as possible, especially if infidelity played a role in the divorce proceedings. I handed over the photos, security footage, and the PI's report. He assured me that I had a strong case and recommended I begin separating our finances immediately. Back at home, she bombarded me with messages. At first, they were apologetic, long texts explaining how lonely she had felt, how my frequent travel had made her feel isolated and lonely. Then came the pleas for forgiveness. She promised to go to counseling, to do whatever it took to fix things. When I didn't respond, her tone shifted. She accused me of abandoning her, of overreacting to a mistake. Her family got involved shortly after. Her sister called me, pleading on her behalf. "She's been struggling lately," she said. "She knows she messed up, but she loves you. Don't throw away everything you've built together." I didn't respond. It wasn't their marriage to save, and I wasn't interested in their opinions. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, meetings with my lawyer, and tense interactions at the house. I tried to avoid being there when she was home, but on the few occasions we crossed paths, the conversations were strained. She kept asking for another chance, insisting she'd cut off contact with the coworker and never see the other men again. I didn't believe her. Then I discovered something that sealed the deal. While organizing documents for the divorce, I stumbled across a second phone hidden in the back of her desk drawer. It was an older model Android, one I'd never seen before. When I turned it on, my suspicions were confirmed. The phone was filled with messages to multiple men, including explicit photos and videos. Some of the messages were dated as far back as 2 years ago. I didn't confront her about the phone. There was no point. Instead, I handed it over to my lawyer as further evidence. It was clear to me now that this wasn't a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a pattern of behavior, and there was no coming back from it. The divorce proceedings were contentious. She fought for the house, claiming she deserved it because I was the one who left. My lawyer countered with the mountain of evidence we'd collected, and in the end, I was awarded the property. She received a modest settlement, but nothing close to what she had demanded. Part 4, moving forward. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. The day I signed the papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. While I was glad to finally have closure, the reality of ending a 9-year marriage wasn't easy to accept. I had invested so much into a relationship that turned out to be built on lies. She moved out of the house shortly after the settlement was finalized. As far as I know, she's still seeing the coworker. The thought doesn't bother me anymore. If anything, I feel sorry for him. He's inheriting someone who couldn't even be honest in her own marriage. In the months following the divorce, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started going to therapy, not because I wanted to forgive her, but because I needed to understand why I ignored the warning signs for so long. My therapist helped me recognize patterns I hadn't noticed before, small red flags I had dismissed over the years, thinking they weren't a big deal. I also reconnected with old friends, many of whom I drifted apart from during my marriage. It felt good to have a support system, people who reminded me of who I was before everything fell apart. I started picking up hobbies I'd abandoned. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. She reached out a few times in the first year after the divorce. At first, it was under the guise of wanting to check in, but it quickly became clear that she was hoping for reconciliation. She claimed to have changed, that she'd done the work to become a better person. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The trust was gone, and there was no rebuilding it. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was to the signs, the missed calls, the evasive answers, the sudden changes in her behavior. They were all there, but I chose to ignore them. I've learned to trust my instincts now. If something feels off, it probably is. A year later, I'm in a much better place. The pain of betrayal has faded, replaced by a sense of freedom. I've started dating again. It's a slow process, but I'm determined not to let my past define my future. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that no matter how much you love someone, you can't ignore the truth. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. I've made peace with what happened, and I'm ready to move forward. My wife had a drunken one-night stand, and her best friend told me, I never expected my life would change based on a phone call from my wife's best friend. We had been married for 8 years. Our relationship had its ups and downs like any other. We met at a neighborhood block party where we both had a discussion on the last hamburger. I insisted she take it, but we ended up sharing it. We exchanged numbers and the rest was history. Man, these stories always start with some meat fairy tale nonsense. Everything seemed normal until 3 months ago. My wife started working extra shifts at the hospital. At least that's what she told me. She would leave without much explanation. Her behavior changed gradually. She stopped telling me about her day. Classic sign, folks. When they stop talking, start walking. But these poor bastards never see it coming until it's too late. Our conversations became shorter. The intimacy between us faded. I didn't think much of it at first. I assumed it was just a phase, maybe work stress or something similar. Then came the call that changed everything. Here we go. The bomb's about to drop. Most of these nurses are always trouble, trust me. Her best friend Ashley called me on Thursday afternoon. I will never forget it. I was at work when my phone rang. Her voice sounded strange and hesitant. Ashley wanted to meet me in person. She couldn't tell me over the phone. I agreed to meet her after work at a coffee shop. Coffee shop meeting sometimes brings bad news. At least Ashley had the decency to tell him face to face. When I arrived, Ashley looked nervous. She couldn't look at me directly. After ordering coffee, she took a deep breath. What she told me next made my world collapse. My wife had a one-night stand with a doctor from the hospital. It happened during a work conference out of town. Doctors and nurses tell old as time. These hospital conferences are sometimes just excuses for hookups. They had been drinking at the hotel bar. One thing led to another. Ashley only knew because my wife confessed to her. She felt I deserved to know the truth. My mind went blank. I sat there, coffee getting cold. Ashley provided details that confirmed it wasn't a mistake. My wife had been acting strange because of guilt. The extra shifts were her avoiding me. I thanked Ashley for her honesty. She risked her friendship with my wife to tell me. I simply asked her why she was telling me, and her answer surprised me. She said I would want someone to tell me if my significant other cheated on me. Even though it was none of my business, I just couldn't live with it. I drove home in a daze. Ashley's the real MVP here. Most friends cover for the cheater. Loyalty among women beats telling the truth to the husband. Our 8 years of marriage flashed before my eyes. The trust we built was shattered in an instant. I needed time to process this information. I needed evidence before confronting my wife. I needed a plan. I didn't confront my wife immediately. I needed to be smart about this. Emotional reactions wouldn't help anyone. For the next week, I paid closer attention to her behavior. She continued with her extra shifts routine. Sometimes she would stare at her phone and look worried. Other times, she would step outside to take calls. I started checking our phone records. There was a number that appeared frequently. It belonged to, let's call him Dr. Parker, from her hospital. My wife never mentioned him before. I checked her emails when she was showering. Always check the digital trail. These cheaters think they're slick, but they always leave breadcrumbs. The doctor probably has a wife or girlfriend at home too, completely clueless. Always check the digital trail. These cheaters think they're slick, but they always leave breadcrumbs. The doctor probably has a wife or girlfriend at home too, completely clueless. There were several exchanges about the conference. Nothing explicit, but the tone was too friendly. I reached out to Ashley again for more information. We met at a park this time. Ashley revealed that the one-night stand happened 2 months ago. My wife had been drunk, but not blackout drunk. The old "I was drunk" excuse. She knew exactly what she was doing when she followed the doc to his room. She knew what she was doing. The next morning, she regretted it immediately. She swore to Ashley it would never happen again. But Ashley had seen them together at the hospital cafeteria. Their body language suggested it wasn't just a one-time thing. I asked Ashley if she had any proof. Smart man. Getting the receipts, the one-time mistake, it's always a lie. It's never just once, and it's never just a mistake. She showed me photos from the conference after party. My wife was standing too close to this doctor. His hand was on her lower back. They were laughing together. Nothing definitive, but suspicious enough. I thanked Ashley again for her loyalty. She apologized to me for not telling me sooner. She said she was torn, but she believed I deserved the truth. I needed more concrete evidence. I took a day off work and followed my wife. She didn't go to the hospital for her extra shift. Instead, she went to a hotel. I waited in the lobby and watched. Dr. Parker arrived 30 minutes later. They hugged longer than colleagues would. They took the elevator together. I had seen enough. This wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. Exactly what I said. It's never just once. This was an ongoing affair. I went back home and waited. My wife returned late, claiming exhaustion from work. I said okay and pretended everything was normal. I needed to prepare myself for the confrontation. I called a lawyer the next day. I needed to know my options. I prepared everything carefully. Timing was crucial. I printed the phone records. I saved screenshots of emails. I even had the photos from Ashley. I waited until a weekend when we both had free time. My wife was making breakfast when I placed the evidence on the kitchen table. She turned around with a smile that quickly faded. Her face went pale when she saw the papers. I didn't say anything. The evidence spoke for itself. She stood frozen. Her eyes darted between me and the photos. She put down the spatula and sat heavily at the table. Tears formed in her eyes. I remained standing, arms crossed. She reached for the phone records with trembling hands. Her shoulders slumped with each page she turned. Now the waterworks come. Tears aren't for what she did. They're because she got caught. 8 years of marriage meant nothing when Dr. 𝗍𝗃𝗼𝗼 came along. When she got to the photos, she closed her eyes. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, she looked up. She tried to explain it was a mistake. The one-night stand happened when she was drunk. But she couldn't explain the continuing communication. She couldn't explain going to the hotel. Her excuses fell apart as I pointed to each piece of evidence. She broke down completely. Between sobs, she admitted everything. The one-night stand, the guilt. The guilt didn't stop her from going back for seconds, thirds, and who knows how many more times. Funny how the guilt only kicks in when they're caught. The decision to see him again, the full-blown affair that followed. She begged for forgiveness. She promised to break it off immediately. She suggested counseling. I simply shook my head. I had already packed a bag. I was going to stay at a hotel for a few days. I needed space to think. She grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. I gently removed her hand. Her mascara ran down her cheeks. I walked out of the door without looking back. At the hotel, I called a lawyer again. This time I made an appointment. That night, my phone exploded with messages from her. Apologies, explanations, promises. The classic cheaters trilogy. Sorry, excuse, promise, rinse and repeat until the sucker takes them back. I turned off my phone. I needed clarity. The lawyer outlined my options clearly. Our state had no-fault divorce laws. The affair wouldn't matter much legally, but at least I had evidence if needed. We discussed asset division, the house. No-fault divorce is such BS, but believe it or not, sometimes a no-fault divorce can work. The cars, the savings accounts, everything we accumulated over 8 years. I stayed at the hotel for a week. My wife continued calling and messaging. She even showed up at my workplace once. Security escorted her out. When I finally returned home, she filled the house with flowers. She had taken time off work. She wanted to make things right. I sat her down for a final conversation. I placed divorce papers on the coffee table. Her face crumpled, but I did not flinch. Trust, once broken, was impossible for me to rebuild. I explained that I would be moving out permanently. She could keep the house until it sold. We would split everything fairly. I didn't want drama. Too reasonable if you ask me. In some states, you would have to be married for 10 years, like Texas, to qualify to get half. I didn't want revenge, I just wanted out. She begged one last time for another chance. I shook my head. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. The divorce process took 3 months. During that time, I found my own apartment. I focused on work. I reconnected with old friends. I started therapy. Ashley reached out occasionally to check on me. She and my wife were no longer friends. Of course, they're not friends anymore. Cheaters hate being exposed more than they hate cheating. Ashley chose truth over loyalty to a liar, rare these days. My wife tried reconciliation attempts during the divorce process. Love letters, gifts, promises of change. I returned everything unopened. The day the divorce finalized felt surreal. 8 years of marriage ended with the signature. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a hollow acceptance. 6 months later, I ran into Ashley at Wawa's. She told me my ex-wife had transferred to another hospital. Of course she transferred. Couldn't face the consequences of her actions. Probably everyone at work knew what she did. Karma is harsh sometimes. Apparently the affair with the doctor ended badly. I felt nothing hearing this news. I had moved on. Sometimes people ask if I regret my decision. I never do. They always come back when the affair blows up. The grass wasn't greener after all. Too bad, so sad. This man made the right call. Never take back a cheater. Self-respect matters more than comfort. Sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. I learned that loyalty isn't just about staying. Sometimes it's about knowing when to leave. Oh, I forgot to mention, the doctor did have a wife and she divorced him, and rumor has it, she took half of everything from him. Well, the doc fucked around and my wife's secret life as a flight attendant wasn't what it seemed. I'm a 42-year-old postal worker named James, and my wife Rebecca is 39. We met in 2012 at a local coffee shop where she worked as a barista while studying to become a flight attendant. Our relationship moved quickly. We dated for 2 years before getting married in 2014. Life was good in the beginning. Rebecca achieved her dream of becoming a flight attendant for United Airlines in 2015. The schedule was tough. She'd be gone 3 to 4 days at a time, but the benefits were great. Free flights meant we could travel anywhere during her off time. We bought a modest house in Denver, Colorado in 2016. The first 5 years of marriage were amazing. We traveled to Hawaii, Paris, and Tokyo using her flight benefits. I adjusted my postal route to match her schedule when possible. When she was home, we made the most of our time together. Things started changing in late 2020. Rebecca's flight schedules became more erratic. Instead of 3 to 4 day trips, she'd be gone for 5 to 6 days at a time. When I asked about the longer trips, she said the airline was short-staffed due to COVID and needed senior flight attendants to pick up extra routes. That made sense, so I didn't question it, but other things started feeling off. She became very protective of her phone. She'd take calls in another room or step outside to talk. When I'd walk in, she'd quickly end the call or switch screens. In January 2021, I noticed she started buying new clothes and wearing more makeup, even on her days off. She joined the gym and lost 15 pounds. When I complimented her, she said she needed to maintain a certain image for her job. The real red flag started in March 2021. Rebecca usually kept her flight schedule on our shared Google Calendar, so I'd know when she was working. But the flights she listed stopped matching her actual trips. She'd say she was flying to Chicago for 3 days, but would be gone for 5. When I asked about the discrepancies, she'd blame last-minute schedule changes. I started feeling like something wasn't right, but I pushed the thoughts away. We'd been married for 7 years. Surely she wouldn't lie to me, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. In June 2021, I was organizing our home office when I found a receipt that put my stomach in knots. It was for a hotel in Miami for May. During a week, Rebecca told me she was flying routes in Seattle. I went online and checked our credit card statements. There were multiple hotel charges in cities that didn't match her supposed flight schedule. I felt sick. Was my wife living a double life? I needed proof before confronting her. I wrote down all the dates and locations from the credit card statements and compared them to her work schedule. Over 6 months, there were at least 12 trips where the locations didn't match. I considered hiring a private investigator, but couldn't afford it. Instead, I started documenting everything. I took photos of receipts, saved credit card statements, and kept a detailed log of her trips. The breaking point came in August 2021. Rebecca said she had a 4-day trip to Boston. On day 2 of her supposed Boston trip, our neighbor mentioned seeing Rebecca at Denver International Airport, but she wasn't in her uniform. She was dressed up and walking with a tall man who was dressed kind of casual. I called United Airlines' crew scheduling department, pretending to be Rebecca's doctor, needing to reach her about test results, but they could not give me any information. It violated their privacy rules. So with that roadblock, I just concentrated on what I already had and just continued digging. I spent the next 2 days gathering more evidence. I found more hotel receipts, restaurant charges for 2 people, and even movie ticket stubs from times she was supposed to be working. When Rebecca returned, I was waiting in the living room. She walked in with her usual flight bag, acting normal. She started telling me about her Boston trip when I stopped her. I know you were not in Boston. You were not even working this week. She looked like she had seen a ghost after I said that. She tried denying it at first, but I had proof something was going on. The receipts, the credit card statements, our neighbor's sighting at the airport. Rebecca broke down crying. The truth was worse than I imagined. For the past year, she'd been using her flight benefits to maintain a relationship with a wealthy businessman named Sammy. They met on one of her actual flights in 2020. He was a frequent first-class passenger who lived in Miami but did business in multiple cities. She would pretend to have work trips, but was actually meeting Sammy in different cities. He paid for everything during their time together: hotels, meals, shopping. The only thing she paid for was occasionally booking backup hotel rooms with our credit card when their plans changed. I never meant for it to happen, she sobbed. Sammy treated me like a queen, and it felt wonderful. He bought me expensive gifts, took me to fancy restaurants. It was exciting and romantic. I asked if she loved him. She couldn't answer. How many other flight attendants know about this? I asked. A few, she admitted. They covered for me sometimes when you called looking for me. That hurt almost as much as the affair, knowing her coworkers helped deceive me. I told Rebecca to pack her bags and leave. She begged for another chance, said she'd quit her job, go to counseling, anything to save our marriage. But the trust was completely broken, I told her. I wouldn't be able to look at her the same. Does Sammy know you're married? I asked. More tears. Yes, he's married too. His wife lives in Miami. Of course, 2 cheaters living fantasy lives while destroying their marriages. I contacted a divorce attorney the next day. Because Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, Rebecca's affair technically didn't matter legally, but I had documented evidence of her using our joint credit cards to facilitate her affair, booking backup hotels, flights, etc. My lawyer said this could help in negotiating a settlement. Rebecca moved out and got a small apartment on her own. When I filed for divorce, she didn't contest it. The proceedings were fairly straightforward since we had no children and few joint assets. We sold the house and split the proceeds. She kept her car and retirement accounts. I kept mine. The hardest part was telling our families and friends. My parents were devastated. They loved Rebecca like a daughter. Her parents were ashamed of her behavior and actually apologized to me. Some of her flight attendant friends tried defending her on social media, saying I was controlling and suspicious. I simply posted copies of hotel receipts showing she was meeting her married boyfriend while pretending to work. They quickly deleted their posts. Through mutual friends, I learned that Sammy's wife eventually discovered their affair. Apparently, Rebecca wasn't his only flight attendant girlfriend. He had a pattern of pursuing them on his frequent business trips. His wife divorced him and got a massive settlement. Rebecca tried contacting me several times after the divorce was finalized in early 2022. She sent emails saying she regretted everything and realized she threw away a good marriage for a fantasy. I never responded. It's been 2 years since discovering her double life. I'm still working as a postal carrier, enjoying the simplicity of an honest day's work. I've started trying my hand at the dating scene. Nothing serious, just getting to know people. Rebecca still works as a flight attendant, but transferred to a different airline en route. Last I heard, she was single and in therapy. Sammy moved to California after his divorce. The experience taught me a lot about trust and paying attention to red flags. When someone's words and actions don't match, there's usually a reason. I ignored the signs for months because I didn't want to believe my wife could deceive me so thoroughly. Some people say I should have tried harder to save the marriage, but how do you rebuild trust with someone who maintained a double life for over a year, who involved their co-workers in their deception, who only showed remorse when caught? The divorce was financially and emotionally draining, but it was worth it to regain my self-respect. I'd rather be alone than with someone who could lie to my face day after day. Looking back, there were earlier signs I missed. Rebecca became increasingly materialistic after becoming a flight attendant. She was always comparing our lifestyle to her co-workers who married wealthy men. I thought she was just venting, but she was actually growing resentful. The affair with Sammy allowed her to temporarily live the luxury lifestyle she craved: 5-star hotels, expensive restaurants, designer shopping sprees. But it was all fake, built on lies and betrayal. I've learned that true happiness comes from being authentic and honest, both with yourself and others. Rebecca's double life as a flight attendant might have seemed exciting, but it was ultimately empty and destructive. For anyone suspicious of their spouse's behavior, trust your gut. Document everything. Don't confront them until you have solid evidence. And remember that someone who can maintain a double life while looking you in the eye and lying is unlikely to change. I'm sharing my story not for sympathy, but as a warning about the importance of recognizing red flags and maintaining strong boundaries in relationships. Pay attention when things don't add up. Don't let someone gaslight you into doubting your instincts. Today, I'm rebuilding my life one day at a time. The pain and anger have faded. I'm focusing on my job, my health, and developing honest relationships with people who share my values. Rebecca's betrayal nearly broke me, but it also made me stronger. I know what I will and won't accept in a relationship. Most importantly, I know I deserve someone who values truth and loyalty as much as I do. The experience changed how I view marriage and trust. While I haven't given up on love, I'm much more careful about who I let into my life. Actions speak louder than words, and someone's character is revealed by their choices, not their promises. For now, I'm content with my simple, honest life, delivering mail and rebuilding my savings. The future is uncertain, but at least it's authentic, and that's worth more than any fantasy lifestyle built on lies. Got another story. This story was shared with me on February 13th, 2025 by a young lady from the audience. I found my husband's sex tapes with 3 women, but his pastor still wants us to stay married. Hello, Tony. It is not with pleasure that I write this email to you, but with great sorrow and pain. We met back in 2015 at a barbecue family party. I do not want to make this email long and only hit the main points. Fast forward 3 years later, we got married and got our very own apartment. From the onset, about a week in, I noticed that his phone was always in his hands and he didn't want me to touch it. I one day mistakenly took his phone to work as I was rushing out of the car. That same day, I saw a text message from an unknown number. I just casually responded, and later the lady sent a picture of her full body with only a bra and underwear, saying, "Baby, I just wanted to tease you." In shock, I did not say anything until I got home, where I confronted him. He played cool and said the girl was being delusional. She has been texting him from a third world country, but nothing serious. I laid out the rules, that flirting is a form of cheating, but he says no, he doesn't think so. We argued and I packed my bags ready to go the next day. I come from work ready to go, and I find the pastor who ordained us waiting for me. A year later, I get pregnant, and it was a very difficult one. The first 3 months, all I did was vomit. He comes and asks me if we could keep our intimate moments. I told him to be patient with me because I could not even swallow water without it coming out, and he wants me to perform a BJ. It was from that moment that I did not know that I just activated everything in him to go cheat outside. During my maternity, we took 2 jobs, and I also prepared to take a license exam. One day I asked him to show me the maternity photo shoot the cameraman sent him. He gives me the laptop, but I couldn't find them in the Google Drive. It was then I looked for them in his photo gallery. It was then I was hit with countless pictures of naked women pleasuring themselves, videos, and text messages. I was 3 weeks until my delivery. I couldn't breathe. I did not confront him and asked his brothers to come take him. However, because of COVID, they convinced me to just wait until COVID was over, since no one would have taken me to the hospital for delivery, and ambulances were never coming on time. Soon after the delivery, we started couples counseling, but got sidetracked by all the baby care. Later, we had meetings with a couple that had more marriage experience than us to counsel us, and I laid boundaries. 2 years later, we moved to a smaller city and we moved on. I just started noticing that he would leave and come back, saying he went to see his friend. One day he left, and I opened his laptop, and there it was. I found 2 videos of him having sex with another woman in a hotel with his favorite Chris Brown song. For a week, I did not confront him. It was killing me, and I cried every night. This was just a week before our end-of-year vacation, which we planned to go to different cities. When I confronted him, he started denying that it was him. Then he turned to anger, crying, and wanted to harm himself. So I told him I would leave the house until he calms down. Then we agreed that something needed to change. We agreed after our vacation. We needed to come to an agreement about what needs to be done. He goes on his all-boys trip, and I go on my solo trip. January comes, I kicked him out, and I go start looking for lawyers. However, my son keeps on crying to see his dad every day after daycare. We had to sit down and talk about what we needed to do, as I was ready for a divorce. He pleads and he asks that we go to therapy, and we were just on the verge of purchasing our first home. We go to therapy, we go for more prayers, where the pastor did everything to convince me to stay. We bought the new home and had to cut some expenses, so we put a pause on therapy. Plus, I lost my job that was paying for half of the therapy. He actually changes and becomes more present in the house and helps me more and pays attention. Then we decided to try for a new baby. This is where all hell broke loose. I noticed once I came home, the washroom in the main bedroom was dirty. I complained about it, and he gets angry. He refuses to help me with the newborn, not to even massage my swollen feet and aching back. I decided to go stay with my mom for a couple of weeks. I come back, I go through his phone. Just like I guessed, he was sex chatting another girl the same day after my delivery. I was destroyed. I confronted him, and he conveniently lied that it was old photos and videos that he had forgotten to delete. Since the baby was just 3 months, I told myself to focus on my baby. Come October, I find more chats on his WhatsApp with numerous women from different countries. This time, I punched him and I wanted to leave. His cousin comes in to ask me to pray for him and that we need to find him a sex therapist. This time, I was crying asking him, why is he hurting me and the kids like this? As usual, he apologized and said he only slipped, but he did not do anything physical with any of the women. He promises to stay committed, and by the end of the year for our vacation, he will take care of me, and we will sign up for sex addiction therapy. I decided to go to a new church this time, a mixed-race church. I confided in them with my problems in my marriage. This time, I get a different reaction for the first time. They were concerned that I was being emotionally abused and that I needed to think deeply about my own future. I told them after the vacation, I will be back for more prayers. I initiated prayers and fasting for both of us before the vacation. During our vacation, he was all loving and taking care of me. I came back early to the kids since my mom had to go back to work, and he stayed 4 days longer. He came back, and I was not suspecting anything until I asked him for his phone so that I could transfer some pictures to my phone. Then a random girl just called. That is when I knew something was wrong. I gave him the phone to answer the call and take it back. I went through his gallery and deleted the trash box. I find a 11-minute long video of him getting a BJ from one of the waitresses at the hotel, moaning and enjoying himself until they both reach climax, gives her compliments for her well-done performance, and they continue. I confront him, and he denies it so hard and lies about it. I told him this time, I'm done. I call for a family meeting with both parents. His dad was in shock and wanted us to at least try counseling again. I said no, but he begs me for the sake of the kids. We are now in counseling where he confessed that he actually slept with 3 different women. He says this time he will change and that he has deleted all the numbers and pictures from the past. He will change his phone number. He has been praying and fasting. As usual, he is asking me to stay. The audacity. I am just watching him because I know this is not over yet. I'm not here willingly anymore, and not for love. First, I want to thank her for sharing her story. Second, I am pretty sure most of us are thinking the same thing. She shouldn't stay. Second, as I have said in many of the videos, don't ever let someone make a fool out of you. Just saying. My name is Dave. I am a 55-year-old industrial electrician. Most of the time, my job is to quickly diagnose and fix a problem with a production machine, and from time to time, replace an electrical motor. I have been in this job for close to 30 years now. I did not attend college, but I did take some technical school classes. 99% of my education came from being taught on the job by a man that even today has forgotten more about doing this work than I will ever learn. I am going to tell the story of my divorce and the aftermath of it. If Darla and I had not gotten divorced this year, it would mark our 30th anniversary. We now have 4 grown children, 3 sons and a daughter. About 18 years ago, Darla returned to school. She was working about 20 hours a week. I was pulling most of the load. Still, we got past it. I was very proud watching Darla graduate from law school. Within 5 years, Darla was working in a large law firm and was getting a lot of court training. For the first few years, everything was okay. We took out some loans, and Darla and I had almost paid them off using some of her bonuses. Over time, I started to take note that Darla was getting home later and later. I started asking her what was going on. Our baby daughter was about 16 at the time this started happening. My 2 oldest sons were gone. One was in college in Mississippi, and the other son was in the Marines. Many evenings, it was just my daughter and I eating dinner because my son was working in the evenings. I started to also notice Darla was not interested in the bedroom and really started getting distant. My daughter noticed and called all her brothers about how their mother was never at home. My son, who was in the Marines, got some leave and came home. He was home almost 2 days before his mother even took notice. That really hurt him. It also pissed him off, and he started following his mother. He started to get photos of his mom going into hotels and getting in another man's car many times. I remember standing at a work table working on a motor controller and just started crying. I was ashamed of what my kids were going through. My son and I got into a heated argument about his mother. I knew my marriage was over. My son in Mississippi came home the next day. All 4 of my kids were waiting for their mother to come home. When she did, they jumped on her. My son showed her the photos and told the story of following her. Darla started crying and left the house with the kids following her, calling her all sorts of names. I asked my son to go back to school. My son's leave was up and he returned to North Carolina. Darla never attempted to call me or the kids. All I know is I came home and my daughter told me the slut had packed up and left. I walked to my daughter. I held her head in my hand, and after stroking her hair, I asked her not to use that word to describe Darla. She promised me that she would not. I drove to the capital city and found a divorce attorney and told him everything, as well as showed him the photos my son took. He wanted my okay to contact all 4 of my kids. I said my daughter is with me, but shopping nearby. He spoke to all 4 of them, and all 4 said they would testify about their mother. The attorney did say he wanted to find out who Darla's AP was. This was because in a hearing, he wants to have him subpoenaed to court. I asked why, and he said Darla is an attorney, and her firm will circle the wagons around her. He wants the AP on record. He asked me to go spend several hours with my daughter and come back in 3 hours. By then, he said he could have the divorce paperwork ready to go over. He was not going to file it though until he knew more about Darla's AP. When my daughter and I returned home, we noticed Darla's car in the driveway. My daughter said, "Daddy, let's go somewhere else until she leaves." My daughter got so upset, I knew I had to drive on. I dropped her off at a friend's house and returned home. Darla was still there and was sitting in the living room when I opened the door. Darla wanted to know what she could do to repair her family. She was crying by this time. I said, "Darla, right now, all 4 of your babies hate the ground you walk on. How could you be so stupid to do this? If you were unhappy in our marriage, leave, get a divorce." She had no answer and again begged me to let her move back. I simply told her, if you move back, the kids will leave. That was the last contact I had with Darla for almost a month. By that time, my attorney had identified Darla's AP as one of the married partners at the firm and her boss. My attorney did file the divorce papers. Then, the day we got a hearing date, he also subpoenaed her AP at home in front of his wife, I was told. The process server told the attorney his wife was standing behind him as he served him. This attorney tried several times to get that subpoena squashed, but the judge said no. He even tried to get it squashed by saying he was going to be Darla's attorney. The judge said, "Okay, but the information I have that backs up the subpoena tells me I need to hear your testimony." The closer the date came to the hearing, the more panicked both of them became. One weekend, I received a phone call from the AP's wife. She wanted to see the photos, as well as the photos of her husband going into the hotels. She came to my home, had some tea my daughter had made, and I gave her copies of everything. The day of the hearing came, and all 4 of my kids walked into the courthouse along with my attorney and I. Just before the hearing started, I saw AP's wife enter and sit in the back. I wish I could say the judge had a field day with Darla. He did not, because just as soon as the judge called the hearing to order, Darla's attorney said she was not contesting the divorce, did not want the house, did not want my retirement, did not want custody of my daughter, and was not asking for any support. My attorney stood up and said, I wanted $250 a month until my daughter was 18. The judge looked at Darla and she nodded. The judge granted the terms and we all walked out and had lunch. Even AP's wife was sitting close by. The AP's wife is very close to my age and her daughters are already grown and married. Her divorce was coming about a month later. My daughter and I attended the hearing. Oh, it was a crap show. Her attorney had subpoenaed Darla. The judge was the same judge that handled our divorce. Because the AP's wife was a stay-at-home mom, she got the house, she got half of his retirement, and close to $1,500 a month for support. I can't remember for how long, but it was a long time. In the years since, the AP's wife and I have spent some time together. All of our kids are friends with each other. She and I both are never going to remarry ever again. Her husband, by a vote of the partners, was forced out. He did go west and is a full partner in another law firm. He left bitter, and his now ex told me she would rue the day she divorced him. He would get remarried and find a woman better and younger than she was. Well, according to his daughter, he did just that. Then, about 3 years later, his young wife left him. AP's wife is happy and plays with her grandkids. I am playing with mine. My sons to this day will not speak to Darla. She was not allowed around when the grandbabies were born and was told she would be arrested if she showed up to their weddings. My daughter checks up on her from time to time, but they are not as close as a mother and daughter should be. It makes me feel bad that this happened, but my kids are grown and they make their own decisions. After our divorce, Darla moved to Florida and is today a full partner in a law firm in the Tampa area. She is doing well financially, and last I heard, was living in a home worth a lot of money. A few years ago, Darla came back here to be with my daughter while she was recovering from childbirth. I was sitting in a local restaurant when Darla entered and asked me if she could sit. I waved her to a seat and she ordered some coffee, asked me about our son, and we made small talk for maybe 20 minutes when she took my hand and said, "Dave, I screwed up really bad, I know. At the time I started my affair, I was making almost twice what you were making. I think I just thought I fell out of love with you, Dave. That was a bad mistake, I know." I told Darla I was the same man she married, and it was her that changed. I was then and still proud she got her law degree. Darla started to weep a bit. She told me that her AP said I was a loser that was holding her back. Then she dropped $5 on the table and got up. As she walked away, she told me, "Dave, you're not the loser here. I am." As I watched Darla walk away, I started thinking about how easy it is to listen to people that are toxic. They will cause you nothing but misery